Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristin Keen, and this is the Rethreading Lives podcast. Hello, Rethreading Lives podcast listeners and viewers. Welcome to recap of Aaron Butler, where I get to watch the videos and we get to recap it together, which is always a little bit awkward and fun. So this is my interview with Aaron Butler. Aaron and I met in Lifework Leadership, which is a Christian leadership group in the city. And he is, I feel very, very big sisterly towards him. He's quite a bit younger than me. He is a rising leader in our city. He is kind and insightful. And I loved my interview with him. I learned a lot. And I loved hearing about his mom. If you listen to the interview, his mom was his biggest influence in his life. His mom was his steady. His mom was this leader in every job she took. And yeah, just to hear about his mom's influence on his life is beautiful. So let's take a listen.
Being a great manager is not something that happens and then you're done being a manager, right? We're human. We all fall short of the glory of the Lord, I like to say.
Yeah.
So we're going to make mistakes. I used to think I was a great manager. And then I started analyzing some of the things that I've done as a manager. And I've recognized that I'm still growing as a leader. I'm still growing as a manager. I'm still growing as someone who is there.
Just going to pause right there and say one of the elements of the rethreaded process is openness. And that's the ability to be honest with yourself and vulnerable with other people. So honest with yourself. And I'm telling you, the older I get, the realize how much I have not been honest with myself. And then to be vulnerable to other people about where I'm not a good manager or a good leader or who I want to be. I tend to want to cover that up in some blame and shame. But I love this part of Aaron. We end up having a great conversation about being open and what makes a great manager and what's the difference between a manager and leadership. And he had a lot of beautiful insights.
To guide people through their journey, whatever the case may be. And it's never complete. That's the point of the journey. It's a consistent journey. So as you get to a point where from the outside looking in, you're successful, you have this organization that's doing so many good things, right? Mm-hmm. So of course you're going to falter as a human. But the fact that you are aware of it, you analyze it, you say, okay, where could I have done better that day? That means you're growing, and you're growing as a leader, and that growth is never ending. I'm reading a book called The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by retired Admiral McRaven. And in it, he talks, and this is someone who's commanded fleets of the Navy, right? And high up in the military. And he talks about the moments that he's fallen short and the experiences that he's had where he hasn't been successful and how he's had to deal with that. And leadership is never ending. It's always continuous. And that's why I love what I do, because I learn something new every day. I learn something new about myself, something new about the people I'm working with, the organizations I'm working with. I get to learn something new every day about what it takes to be a leader. And there's always a different situation that pops up. That
is so true. That is one thing I do love about my job. I get to learn all the time, whether it's about management. I learn every time I do this podcast and I get to sit here on the couch with someone, I learn, which is why I obsessively love this podcast and want you to learn like I learn here. Like there has been some interviews that I've done on this couch that are changing my life. So again, I think that's part of the openness, right? The willingness to learn and to admit you don't know everything and to keep growing. It's a part of the process. If we don't do it, then we stop growing. Me and Jason just had that conversation this morning, my coworker. A lot of business books talk about if you're not growing, then you're dying. And reflecting on that for Rethreaded. How in a work culture do you create vulnerability? Like, it's almost like against everything that business says.
So I got my first job when I was 13 years old. I became a supervisor when I was 14. And every job I've had since then, I've been in a supervisor or a manager role. So I've been managing people for the last 22 years. And I was 16, so I was a kid. And I was managing this young man. He was younger than me. And we worked at a water park. Working at a water park is the most fun I've ever had in my life. I just want to put that out there. But he always seemed so miserable. And I didn't understand it because we're at a water park.
This is also why I love this interview, because I'm laughing in the clip and I'm still laughing again when Aaron's telling the story. I love it. You can see why he feels like a brother, right? He's like this fun, joyful guy that loves water parks. What water park did you work at?
So on Long Island.
Oh, Long Island, because you grew up in New York.
Yeah, so on Long Island, there's a water park out in Riverhead called Splish Splash.
Yes.
It's still there as far as I know, and it's been there for. You could have told me it's been there 50 years, and I believe you. I don't know how long it's been there.
Okay, but Splish Splash
Long water Island. Park, and I was just like, hey, just started talking to him. How do you like school? What grade you in? All this other stuff, just to get to know somebody. And I asked him how he liked working here. As the conversation was going on, he's like, "Oh, it's fine. My parents are concerned though because I have a black supervisor." And I looked around because obviously I'm the only black supervisor at this place. And I looked around and I said, "How do your parents know I'm black? They never met me." And he was like, "Oh, I told them." And I was taken aback. Again, I'm 16 years old. I've been black my whole life, but it was the first time someone's very casually, very normally said it. And do I think that was the reason why he was miserable at Splish Splash? No, I think he was just a miserable person. But when he said that, it gave me an insight to who he is and where he's from. It didn't change anything because, you know what? My goal, and this is something about me, my goal was to prove his parents wrong. To be a great manager so that he would go home and tell his parents how great this black supervisor was and how wonderful I am and how nice I am to him and how I make him feel great, right? And that's how I've lived my life for a long time, till probably my late 20s.
So this is, as I'm watching this, I also just recorded Marianne's recap, and she also had a transformation in her life where she was trying to prove that she was worthy because her dad left. And if she was good enough, her dad would come back. And kind of this, I mean, we all do it, right? Part of being open and vulnerable is like he is able to admit that the deeper reason why he was doing things is to prove his worth. Essentially, blame and shame are getting in there, right? And when you can operate out of a different place and not blame and shame, but out of your purpose, out of your specific act of love that you're created to give the world, it changes your motivation. It changes the space which we live out of.
Have a conversation with someone that's a reasonable conversation and allow that person to talk gives way to that openness. I've learned so many things from employees. I've had employees call me when someone has passed away in their house. I've had employees call me when they've had medical emergencies and then tell me. I've had an employee call me when they got arrested and tell me I was their first call. That's not because of anything other than giving people that latitude to have real conversations with me, and also having real conversations and being vulnerable. I like to think that's sometimes my superpower, because I can give a piece of myself to someone so that they feel comfortable with me, so that we can have a real conversation. So I don't think it's being that openness is a bad thing. I think it gives way to really impact other people's lives.
Really, I think it's a space issue. I think that the good managers, the good leaders are able to hold space. And I think that's part of being in community with each other and being intentional with your time, right? Is to give people your time to create space for them to hear them. So you're living in community with them, you value them, you see them, which then breeds openness and again, expands everyone's potential around you. So that's it for the recap. Go and listen to this podcast with Aaron. He is lovely. Again, the way that he talks about his mom and her leadership. He runs a leadership consulting company. So he is interacting with different companies all over the country every day. So he shares some of his insights that he learns about human beings in the workplace. So it's a beautiful episode. Aaron Butler, check it out. And thank you once again for watching, listening, Rethreading Lives. Make sure you go and visit rethreaded.com and come and change lives with us. Thank you.